Today I'm going to show you a game that is going to blow your mind. I would say it's one of the finest games I've seen in recent times, and there is so much in it to just watch and admire. Let me first start with a story. The story dates back 99 years ago. 1923, Zemish versus Nimzowitsch. They reach a position here. They reach this position on the board, and it is black to move, and black plays the move h6 and white resigns. Really. And it made such a big impression on me at that point. And this game came to be known as the immortal Zugzwang or something like this, because Zugzwang is a term that is used in the end game. What is Zugzwang? That the side that is to move, whatever it does, will spoil its position. So here, when there are less pieces, Zugzwang becomes natural. Pawn end games, sometimes rook end games, and so on. But when you are in a middle game position like this, and a Zugzwang happens, see, let's look at all of white's pieces. The knight cannot move at all. The bishop can move only to c1, but then the b1 knight hangs. The rook, if it moves away anywhere on d1, c1, rook e2 traps the queen. This rook anyway doesn't have anywhere to go. Bishop can't move. King h2 means rook f3. And if you play a3, I'll go a5. And if you just take and play b3, I'll play queen f7, and you are still in Zugzwang. You don't have moves. So this was the game that made me feel like, wow, how did Nimzowitsch achieve this? You know, a Zugzwang where his opponent is so tied up that he cannot make a move in a middle game position. Okay, fast forward to 11th of June 2022, the game between the two heroes up there. White Parham Maghsoodloo, strong Iranian GM, now #1 player after Firouzja has left from Iran. Very strong. And Harikrishna, India #3, also tremendously strong, playing with the black pieces. This was at the Prague Masters round 4. The game opens with d4 and Harikrishna responds with d5. It was the Slough defense, and very standard stuff happened. Knight h4, you put your bishop on e4, provoke f3, I come back, then you attack b7, I protect it, offer a queen trade. Both sides don't want to take on each other's queen because then it will improve the structure. Finally, Harikrishna says, I will take, puts his bishop on b4, king c2, long castles, bishop d3, a6, white has the bishop pair, black is very solid, position is around equal. Here Harikrishna should have struck in the center with c5. Very nice position, could have ended in a simple safe draw, but he went bd6. Now from this point onwards, Harikrishna starts to play not so well. h4, knight e8, e4, knight c7, bishop f2, bishop e7, g4, and Maksudlu, like always, just expands, you know, in the position. a5, bishop g3, knight b8. He wants to put one of his knight on b4. That is his plan. Okay. Bishop e2, he went bd6, offering a trade. E5, bishop b4, c5, b6, then knight went back to a8. Maybe knight a6 was better, but knight a8, knight a2. Now the bishop is attacked, so bishop went back. Bishop now attacks the a5 pawn. You're already a pawn down. The second pawn is hanging. Okay, never mind. I give up another pawn. Now you're 2 pawns down as black. Pawn comes to c5. Maybe here bishop takes h4 was a better move so that you could have recovered one of your pawns. But Harikrishna says, let me play c5 because my opponent's king looks slightly weak. Maksudlu said, which weak king? I am going b4. And now bishop takes b6, f4. Great play, by the way, by white, knight c3. So he's a clear pawn up with a totally better position. Notice that you cannot play d4 to win material because of bishop f3 check. And it's you who are in big trouble here. So knight c6, bishop b6, knight b6, king b3. Rook a8, b5, and king b4. When we reach this position, I was commentating on this game and I said the king looks so safe. But in safety there is also danger, because if one check to the king from somewhere, something goes wrong, it can get mated. So knight c4, b3, knight e3, attacking the rook. This was the key moment of the game. Now the knight wants to give a check here, which will end in a mate. So you want to defend it, and the right move is rook d2. This is the best defensive move, because after rook h c8, bishop f3, white is under control, everything looks good. But he went rook c1, and now Harikrishna brought his other rook, and Maksudlu had to play bd3, bolstering the c2 square, but he went bishop f3. And the question for you, what does black play in this position? Guys, think hard and come up with black to move. So the move that was played here, tremendous move, yeah. Just think about it. The hint is deflection. Rook a1. And the point is, of course, clear. If you take it, then knight c2 check, king a5, rook a8, mate. Okay, this mating pattern you know now. h5 was played by Maksudlu. G takes h5, G takes h5. And now Maksudlu tells Harikrishna that, look, everything is good. I'm still a pawn up. I have a great position. Harikrishna is on his 40th move. He has 1 minute, few seconds on hand. So he thinks, or maybe a couple of minutes on hand. He thinks for like a minute or so, calmly, and inspired by our game, the immortal Zugzwang game, he thinks to himself, look, firstly, the bishop can't go to g2. It can go to e2, but once it goes to e2, h1 is undefended. So then I can go knight c2 check. So let's say, for example, it's black to move, but say it's white's move, knight bishop e2. Then there are many ways to win. One of them is knight c2, take, and rook h1, and you win. Suppose instead of bishop e2, you play the move rook g1. Same thing, knight c2 takes, rook is undefended. And rook cannot go to any other square. Rook e1 is also met with the same fate. Knight wants to move, let's say knight e2 here, instead of here knight e2. Then comes rook takes, you must take with the rook, and then knight c2 check. Once again, same problem, king goes to the a file, rook a8 mate. So you take, and black wins here. h6 might be a possibility here, but after g takes h6, it's the same problem. You can't take on h6, c1 hangs, otherwise knight c2. So keeping all of this in mind, and Harikrishna figures this out with such less time on his clock, king b8, and he says, Parham, you are in Zugzwang now. You cannot make a good move. Parham, now with 30 minutes on his clock because of the 40 moves being reached, decides it's time to go all out. I'm just lost. I don't have moves to make. So he plays f5. And here Harikrishna thought for a while. It's a very complicated position. The right way to continue was knight to d7, attacking e5. And then after take, knight c2, king a5, king b7, threatening checkmate on a8, you go b6. It's the most logical move. Rook takes c3, and black is the one who is winning here. But another way to play here was rook c1, and knight f5. Even this would give a decent edge and good winning chances. But Hari here went for e takes f5. And now Parham to play, what should white do here? So it was Zugzwang, but you had to be a little careful. Parham played this excellent move h6. Very nice move. I liked it so much. And the point is that now, after g takes h6, which happened in the game, we'll go there. Suppose he takes on c1, and g takes h6. What is the only way for white to stay in the game? White to play. The only move to stay in the game here, because black threatens like knight d7, f4. I mean, black is just better. White doesn't have moves. Knight a2 is the correct move. And why is knight a2 the better move than knight e2? Well, the point is, after check, I go to a5, king b7, and now this is met with knight b4. That is the use of the knight there, and then knight a6 blocks. So h6, g takes h6 was played here in the game, and now Maksudlu could have taken on h6, rook c1, rook b6, king c7, rook a6 when the position is around equal. Instead, he took on a1, and that's also a good move because check, king a5, king b7 was played. Now rook a8 is a mate, so you have to be very careful. In came knight, bishop d5, knight d5, and now if you take with the knight, it's a mate, so rook h6, only move. And now Hari here played another nice move, rook takes c3. It's Maksudlu's move. What do you play here as white? Very tough again, but believe it or not, Maksudlu found it. The thing is made slightly easier by the fact that your rook is hanging, so you need to move that rook. But where is the question? So if you go to a2 here, then knight d4 wins. And black is just winning because after rook takes b3, all sorts of threats in the position. So let's say rook h7 here. I take on b3. You go here. I go knight. No, if I go knight c7, then that creates problems after rook d2. I need the knight in the attack. So I can go king c8 or king b8. And next, rook takes b5 is just unstoppable with a mate coming up. So Maksudlu finds this again classy move, rook a4, because it stops knight d4. That's the major point. Knight c3 played by Hari, e6 by Maksudlu. He could have also gone rook h7, which was, I think, maybe easier way. Takes, and Harikrishna goes f4. Now, if Maksudlu would have been calm, he would have played rook e8, and after rook f8, he should have got the half point here. But he thought, why not? Why don't I do something very smart? I take on f4, and then not only, because if he goes to the a file, there are always checks here. Check, it's a perpetual check. So king c7 is important, and this is what he was aiming for. 2 knights versus 2 pawns. And guys, you already know that if there are no pawns on the board, with 2 knights, cannot checkmate opponent's king. It's not possible. I mean, technically it is, but only if white makes a terrible move and goes into the corner and gets mated. Otherwise, there's always stalemate patterns in the air. Knight e d5 played by Hari, and here I think Maksudlu pushed his pawn to b4. So there's this very important thing called the Troitsky's line. And Troitsky's line is works something like this. This is the line. So pawns on it or behind it, pawns on it or ahead of it gives white a winning position. The 2 knights a winning position. So if you are able to stop the pawn here, okay, on b3, then black wins. So sorry, let me rephrase it correctly. If the pawns are on this line or behind it, the side with 2 knights win. So if black could stop it like with his knight here, he should win in any position. However, because he can push the pawn, this is already drawn, table-based draw, because this pawn has already surpassed it. Now, it's not a given that it will be a draw. You have to play carefully as white. It's not like, oh, if the pawn is now ahead of Troitsky's line, it's a draw. No, you have to play carefully. And that's why I think Maksudlu was very keen to push his pawn to b4. I think otherwise he would have played king a4, knight d3, and now important move is to play b4 here. And if you take, that's bad, because then you just give up on key pawn. But if you take on c6, b5, king b6, then now the king can go to this corner, which is farthest away from this pawn and has good chances. I mean, that would be a draw. But Maksudlu played b4, and the main problem here is that now the king is kind of tied up. He could have gone b5, but then knight d3 or knight d5, stopping king b4, and the king has to be sucked in to that position. Okay, king b5, king here takes, king c5, king here, maybe king a5 was also a possibility, king b7, and it seems like white will be able to manage everything, which is true, he managed. And maybe here king b7 also would have worked, king d8, and oops, sorry, we were here, king d8, king d6, and now you'll see Harikrishna slowly and steadily pushing the king away. And it's very useful that this knight controls this square. It's very valuable in many positions. Now here Parham Maghsoodloo blunders with king h6. It's difficult to understand why this is a blunder, but I can explain it from the fact that knights cannot lose a move. So if you move to the right square, then your opponent will not be able to lose a move and you will be able to draw. Let me explain to you that soon. King h7 was correct. He went king h6, king g4. Now Hari is winning. King h5, king g7, king g5, king h7, and now in this position he goes knight to f7, which is a mistake. He should have gone knight g4, and after king g7, knight h6. So you will see that in such a position, now d7 is controlled, d8 is controlled. Oops. And you are just in time for doing everything. Here, push the king away. And it's over. Once the king is cornered, you bring your knight, you let the pawn advance. And this is the moment where the pawn, if not there, let's remove this pawn, it's a draw. Because then it's a stalemate. But because the pawn will queen, it's a checkmate. Or, promote. There are a few moves left. So, knight f7 by Harikrishna was bad because after here, I think you can understand this concept, why it's bad. He went king g7, which is a blunder and looks most natural. But king g8 was drawn. Because after king f6, king h7, this is the position which you want for white to play. Because the knight is controlling here. This is Zugzwang. You have to go down, let's say here. And then, after king h7, let's say if it's white to play here, you go down to g8. I go knight d6, you go king h7, I go knight f5, you go king here, and then I play king e7, and slowly and steadily I will box you and I will win the game here. King g6, king g8, knight d7 now, good move, b6, knight e7, here b7 and king f7, b8 queen and mate. This is how the mate would have occurred. But because he played his king to g7 now here after this, then now knight d6, good move by Harikrishna. Once again he has got into the right mode. And now king f6, important. King g6 is not good. King g6 means the king will run out from here. So king f6, king h7. Now that you have cornered him, it's time for the other knight to join in. And here Maksudlu resigned because after the move knight d7, b6, knight f6, b7, knight e7, queen, and knight g6 mate. So beautiful game here, guys, with so many ups and downs, so many beautiful concepts. First, the better position for Maksudlu, then the Zugzwang on the board, and then the mate with two knights versus a pawn. I think Harikrishna played phenomenally well. A huge congratulations to him for such a fine performance. He is now leading the tournament. Let me just show you the rankings. He's leading on 3 points along with Quang Liem. Vidit drew his game. He's on 1.5 points at number 8 position. And right now, India's two players, Vidit and Harikrishna, are close to each other on 27 and 28 number. That is very close. We also have Anand on number 13. So let's see how these rankings shape up. For now, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye.